Metro Exodus. This game is something else. If you're into immersive worlds with deep storytelling, this one's going to grab you right from the start. I remember jumping in, and immediately, I felt like I was actually there, trudging through the post-apocalyptic Russian wasteland, feeling every bit of that bleak, yet oddly beautiful atmosphere. What's really cool about Metro Exodus is how it takes the series from the underground tunnels and opens it up to these massive open areas without losing that signature claustrophobic tension. You still get those tight, nerve-wracking moments where you're creeping through dark, creepy tunnels. But now, you also have these wide-open spaces that make you feel a sense of freedom and danger at the same time. There's something about walking through a desolate, snowy wasteland and then hearing the distant howl of a mutant that gets your heart racing. Artyom's journey is such an emotional one. He's not just trying to survive. He's out there searching for hope, for a place where humanity can rebuild. You can feel how much this means to him and his crew. That bond between them, especially with his wife Anna, really hit me. You're not just a lone wolf. You've got a family, a team that cares for each other, and that gives everything this extra layer of tension. You want to protect them, to keep them safe. You've got to constantly think about how you're using your resources. Do you craft more ammo, or do you focus on a new gas mask filter because the radiation's about to kill you? That balance adds a lot of strategy to the game. Of Cana Bridge of Spirits. From the moment I started playing, I was just blown away by how stunning everything looked. It's like stepping into a Pixar movie, but you're in control. The art style is so vibrant and colorful, and the way they bring this magical world to life is just mesmerizing. Every detail feels like it was handcrafted with so much love, from the lush forests to the little creatures, the rot. I mean, those rot are just adorable, right? They're like these little black, fluffy creatures that follow you around, and they're not only cute, they're super helpful too. The gameplay, though, man, that's where it gets really fun. It's got that action-adventure feel, with some Zelda-like puzzle-solving and exploration. The combat is super smooth, and the combination of your staff attacks and the rot helping you out is such a cool mechanic. I loved how you can use the rot to distract enemies or empower your attacks. And the way the game gradually gives you new abilities keeps things fresh. Plus, those boss fights, some of them are tough. Like, way tougher than I expected. They really make you strategize, which is a nice surprise in a game that looks so cozy on the surface. And speaking of cozy, the world is just so nice to explore. The puzzles are really well designed too. Not too hard, but they make you feel smart when you solve them. I remember one where you had to use the rot to move objects around and align things just right, and it was just the perfect balance of challenge and satisfaction. The Evil Within, a game that brought some real old-school survival horror vibes, but didn't quite get the love it deserved. Honestly, this game flew under the radar for a lot of people, which is crazy because it was directed by Shinji Mikami, the guy behind Resident Evil 4. You'd think that would have guaranteed a Game of the Year contender, right? What made The Evil Within stand out was how it balanced psychological horror with intense, sometimes brutal action. The game wasn't just about jump scares, though it had plenty of those. It was about atmosphere, tension, and always keeping the player on edge. You never felt safe, which is what survival horror should be all about. And the world? Creepy, unsettling, filled with twisted, nightmarish creatures. It really felt like a descent into madness. But let's be real. The Evil Within wasn't for everyone, and that's probably why it didn't snag a Game of the Year. The difficulty was punishing at times, with limited ammo, tough enemies, and the kind of survival mechanics that could frustrate players who weren't prepared for that hardcore experience. It had this real old-school design that some players loved, but others found off-putting. People who were used to more action-focused horror games weren't always vibing with the slower, more methodical pace. The game was also pretty divisive when it came to its story. Some people thought the plot was all over the place, a little too cryptic and hard to follow, but here's the thing. If you were a fan of old-school survival horror, The Evil Within was a gem. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. If you played Final Fantasy VII Remake, you're already familiar with the epic world and characters, but Rebirth just takes everything up a notch. Midgar was this dark, gritty industrial setting in Remake, but Rebirth opens things up. You get to see more of Gaia, explore lush forests, massive plains, and mysterious ruins that feel like they're hiding 1,000 secrets. And then, there's the combat. Oh boy, if you thought the battles in Remake were good, Rebirth steps it up. It's still that real-time, action-packed combat system, but everything feels smoother and more refined. Switching between characters mid-battle is seamless, and they each bring something totally unique to the table. Cloud's powerful sword slashes, Tifa's quick martial arts, Barrett's massive gun arm. Everyone has a role, and you get to experiment with strategies that make every encounter exciting. And the materia system is back, so you're constantly tweaking your setups, figuring out the best combos for each fight. Oh, and the bosses? Unreal. Square Enix did not hold back. Each boss feels like its own mini-movie, with incredible animations, massive attacks, and a level of intensity that keeps you on the edge of your seat. And it's not just about the challenge. Each boss battle feels personal, like you're part of something epic. And the summons, summoning Ifrit, Shiva, or one of the other iconic Final Fantasy summons, just feels so satisfying. They show up, wreck shop, and leave you thinking, yep, that's why I love Final Fantasy. Forza Motorsport. This isn't a game that casually asks you to win. It challenges you to learn every curve, every braking point, and every opportunity to overtake with precision. At its core, Forza Motorsport is a celebration of cars, competition, and the sheer joy of pushing limits. This is where car enthusiasts and racing fans unite, exploring an intricate world where every vehicle feels like it has its own story to tell. It's not just a race to the finish line. It's about understanding your car, the track, and the craft. There's a kind of magic in how the game translates the language of motorsport into an experience that feels approachable yet endlessly deep. The driving physics are a standout feature here. Forza Motorsport strikes a perfect balance between realism and accessibility, creating a playground where beginners can learn and veterans can refine their skills. Each car handles differently, and you can feel the difference when you switch from a nimble hatchback to a roaring supercar. Car customization is where the game really lets you unleash your creativity. This isn't just about slapping on a new coat of paint or adding a flashy decal. It's a deeply satisfying process where you can tweak everything from the aerodynamics to the engine setup. Forza Motorsport doesn't treat cars like mere tools. They're your partners on the track, and you have full control over how they evolve. The variety of tracks is another area where this game shines. Metal Gear Solid V: The Phantom Pain. It's one of those experiences that really makes you feel like you're in control of a tactical open-world espionage operation. From the moment you start as Big Boss, or Venom Snake, if you want to get technical, you know you're in for something special. The way the game blends stealth, action, and freedom of choice is just next level. Let's start with the open world. Unlike previous Metal Gear games, which were more linear, the Phantom Pain drops you into these massive living environments. You've got Afghanistan's rocky, mountainous terrain, and the jungles of Africa, each filled with enemy bases, patrols, and wild animals. The thing is, the world isn't just a backdrop. It reacts to how you play. You can approach missions any way you want, whether it's going in guns blazing or sneaking in without anyone ever knowing you were there. And the best part? If you get caught, the game doesn't punish you too harshly. You can adapt, think on your feet, and still pull off the mission. That freedom keeps the tension high and the experience fresh every time. The stealth mechanics, they're just so well done. You've got all these tools at your disposal. Decoys, tranquilizer guns, night vision goggles, and you can customize your loadout for every mission. One of my favorite things to do is use the cardboard box, classic Metal Gear, to sneak around or surprise enemies. It's so ridiculous, but somehow always works. And Mother Base is such a cool feature, you're constantly building it up. Detroit Become Human. It's one of those games where you're not just watching a story play out, you're actually shaping it. Your choices matter, and I mean really matter. The choices aren't always easy either. Sometimes you're like, what's the right choice here? And there's no clear answer. It's all about what you value, and that affects the relationships you build and the path you take. There's this branching storyline, so the game reacts to your choices in a way that feels organic. Each playthrough can be so different, and it's wild seeing how even small decisions can snowball into something huge later on. You play as 3 different androids, each with their own story, and the game does an amazing job of making you care about each one. You feel invested in their struggles, their choices, and what they want for their lives. The best part for me was the emotional weight. The game digs into some pretty deep themes: freedom, empathy, what it means to be human. And because it's so interactive, it really makes you think about what you do in these situations. By the end, you're not just playing a game, you're reflecting on your own beliefs and choices, which is pretty rare for a video game. And Detroit doesn't shy away from tension either. There are moments where you're genuinely on the edge of your seat, trying to make quick decisions that could totally change everything. And the stakes are high because, things can go wrong in big ways if you make a wrong call. So, yeah, Detroit Become Human is perfect if you're into games that let you dig into a story deeply, and that give you control over what happens. Outer Wilds. This game is all about exploring the unknown, and it really leans into that feeling of pure discovery. You're a new astronaut, part of this tiny space program from a small, cozy alien race, and you're launched out into space with nothing but your ship and a lot of questions. And I mean a lot of questions. What's so cool about Outer Wilds is that it doesn't handhold or push you in any specific direction. You have this whole solar system to explore, and every single planet is like its own character. Each place is unique, with strange environments, hidden stories, and mysteries that just pull you in. You land somewhere, start exploring, and immediately find yourself getting wrapped up in something unexpected. The sense of wonder in this game is unreal. I mean, you'll be cruising along and suddenly you're uncovering secrets that are far bigger than you'd expect. There's something magical about wandering into these ancient ruins or discovering strange technologies from a long-lost civilization. And as you piece things together, you start to understand that every single mystery is connected, which is honestly so satisfying. One of my favorite things is how much Outer Wilds makes you feel like a real explorer. There's no combat or big flashy objectives. It's all about curiosity. Every time you figure something out, it feels like a little victory, and the game respects that you're smart enough to connect the dots on your own. Another thing is the time loop. It's such a unique mechanic that gives the game this sense of urgency, but without being punishing. Atomic Heart, Enchantment Under the Sea, the latest DLC for Atomic Heart, that's here to take the already wild ride even deeper, literally. This expansion throws you into the underwater depths of Facility 3826, where you'll explore flooded labs and submerged chambers, adding a whole new layer of mystery and challenge to the game. The gameplay is familiar, but with a twist. You'll still be shooting, exploring, and solving puzzles. But now you'll need to deal with underwater environments that change everything. Visibility gets tricky, and the physics aren't quite the same. It's not just about fighting enemies anymore. It's about adapting to your surroundings, making each encounter feel fresh and unpredictable. And speaking of enemies, the expansion introduces new threats that keep you on your toes. These aren't just the same old foes from the main game. Expect to face enemies that require a bit more strategy and quick thinking. The arsenal in this DLC also gets a boost. You'll get your hands on new weapons and equipment designed specifically for the underwater combat you'll be doing. These new tools are crucial because they let you take on the new enemies with the right firepower and tactics. It's all about adapting and finding the best way to survive and thrive in this flooded world. One of the best parts of Enchantment Under the Sea is how it builds on the main story. It doesn't feel like just a side mission or something tacked on for fun. It feels like a real continuation that deepens the lore. Amnesia Rebirth. What really sets Rebirth apart is how it handles fear. You're not some invincible hero with a shotgun. You're vulnerable, fragile even. And that's what makes every decision feel so important. Do you light that match now to see what's ahead? Or do you save it for later when you might really need it? These are the kinds of choices that keep you constantly engaged. The puzzles are another highlight. They're not just there to slow you down or fill time. They're meaningful. They're tied into the world in ways that make you think, this makes sense here. It's never just about pulling a lever or finding a key. It's about understanding your surroundings, piecing things together, and figuring out how to keep moving forward while the world seems to crumble around you. You'll go from tight, claustrophobic spaces that make you feel like the walls are closing in to wide, open areas that somehow manage to feel even more terrifying because of how exposed you are. It keeps you guessing and constantly on edge, never knowing what's waiting for you around the corner or in the dark. But here's the kicker. Rebirth isn't just about scaring you. It's about pulling you into an experience where the fear feels earned. It's a game that challenges you to face the unknown, to confront your own unease, and to push forward even when everything in you is screaming to turn back. So, if you're looking for a horror game that goes beyond the surface, that doesn't just want to startle you, but truly unsettle you, Amnesia. Rebirth is absolutely worth your time. Middle-earth: Shadow of War. It got a bit of a rough start, but honestly, deserved way more love than it got. Now, when it dropped back in 2017, the game had a lot of expectations riding on it because Shadow of Mordor was such a hit. And Shadow of War did a lot of things right, but there's no denying it also stirred up some serious controversy, which didn't help its case at launch. First, let's get the big elephant in the room out of the way: the microtransactions. Yep, that's where a lot of the initial hate came from. It was a single-player game, but Warner Bros. Thought, hey, let's toss in loot boxes and microtransactions. Gamers were not having it. Understandably, no one wants to feel like they're being nickeled and dimed in a story-driven experience. What's wild, though, is that they eventually removed the microtransactions completely. But by then, the damage had already been done. A lot of people had already written it off. And that's a real shame because, beyond all the controversy, Shadow of War had so much going for it. First off, that Nemesis system, still genius. I mean, creating rivalries with orcs who remember you, plot against you, or come back from the dead for revenge. It's such a unique mechanic that really makes every playthrough different. The world felt alive, chaotic, and personal, in a way most open-world games dream of achieving. Then, there's the scale of the game. They took what worked in Shadow of Mordor and just made it bigger. More fortresses to conquer, more regions to explore, and even more dynamic relationships with your followers and enemies. Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Now, this game was supposed to be a huge hit. It's a Star Wars game after all, and it's a sequel to Jedi Fallen Order, which everyone loved. But for some reason, Jedi Survivor didn't quite hit the same heights, at least not right away. Still, this is a game that's definitely better than its initial reception might suggest. When it launched, the game had a lot of bugs, especially on PC. People were reporting frame rate drops, crashes, and all sorts of technical problems. It was one of those situations where the game itself was great, but the technical hiccups held it back. And, in the world of gaming, nothing kills the hype faster than a buggy launch. But here's the thing, once you look past the technical stuff, which has mostly been patched up now, Jedi Survivor is an awesome game. It takes everything that made Fallen Order great and cranks it up a notch. The combat is even more fluid and fun, with new lightsaber stances that let you really customize how you play. Whether you want to go full-on double-bladed action or switch between blasters and sabers, the game gives you options, and it all feels so good. And the exploration. It's even better this time around. The planets in Jedi Survivor are bigger, more open, and filled with secrets to discover. The Metroidvania-style design is back, so you'll be unlocking new abilities and returning to areas to access previously locked-off sections. Jedi Survivor is a beautiful game. The environments are diverse and visually stunning. You definitely don't want to sleep on this one. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. It takes everything Call of Duty is known for, fast-paced combat, intense firefights, and cranks it up to the max. This game isn't just about quick reflexes. It's about living out those high-stakes, cinematic moments that you'd normally only see in movies. Modern Warfare 2 is probably one of the most memorable campaigns in the whole Call of Duty series. What I love about the campaign is how well it balances action with quieter, suspenseful moments. It's not just non-stop explosions and chaos, though there's plenty of that. There are also these more thoughtful moments, where you have to rely on stealth, tactics, or just careful observation. It's a cool change of pace, and it makes those big, explosive moments hit even harder. Plus, the story is packed with memorable characters. You'll see some familiar faces like Soap and Captain Price, and the chemistry between them is fantastic. It's like being in an action movie, where every character has their own vibe, and you end up feeling genuinely invested in what happens to them. This campaign is really clever about mixing things up, so you're never doing the same thing twice. There's a little bit of everything. Stealth missions, full-blown shootouts, and even some sequences that almost feel like puzzles, where you have to think about how to use the environment to your advantage. Every mission has its own personality, and each one is designed to keep you engaged and constantly adapting to new situations. It's the kind of game where you never know what's coming next. Guardians of the Galaxy. This one's interesting because it kind of had everything going for it, but for some reason, it didn't hit as big as people expected at launch. I mean, you've got one of the most beloved Marvel teams, a great developer, Eidos Montreal, and a focus on single-player storytelling, which is something a lot of people were craving, but when it dropped, it just didn't make the splash it should have. So, what happened? Well, for one, people were still feeling the aftershocks of Marvel's Avengers. That game didn't really land well with fans, and it made a lot of people skeptical about Guardians. Folks saw another Marvel game and thought, here we go again with another live service mess, even though Guardians of the Galaxy is nothing like that. It's a totally single-player, story-driven experience with zero microtransactions or live service elements, but it got lumped in with Avengers, and that hurt its initial reception. Now let's talk about the controversial stuff. The characters. Some fans were thrown off because the game's versions of Star-Lord, Gamora, and the rest of the crew didn't look or sound like their MCU counterparts. If you're used to Chris Pratt as Star-Lord or Zoe Saldana as Gamora, it might take you a second to adjust to these new interpretations, but once you do, you realize they're actually great. The writing is sharp, the dialogue is hilarious, and the chemistry between the Guardians is spot on. It feels like you're right there with them, and the banter between the team is one of the best parts of the game. The combat also got mixed reactions. Some people found it a little chaotic at first. Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree. The moment you step into the new content, it feels different, like you've entered a darker, stranger, and somehow even more intimidating part of the world. If the lands between were a fever dream, Shadow of the Erdtree is a full-on nightmare, but, like, the kind you don't want to wake up from because it's just too cool. Combat is as tight and brutal as ever. Whether you're a die-hard melee player, a magic enthusiast, or a mix of both, there are new weapons, spells, and builds to experiment with. I found myself tweaking my character constantly, trying out new strategies for every encounter. It's that classic From Software loop of getting crushed, learning, adjusting, and finally triumphing that makes the whole experience so addictive. And the bosses? Let's just say they're not here to play. They're here to humble you, to make you question every decision you've ever made as a gamer. But at the same time, they're incredible. Each one feels like its own mini-story, with designs and movesets that are as much a spectacle as they are a challenge. There's nothing quite like the adrenaline rush of finally figuring out that perfect dodge timing or landing the killing blow after a 15-minute duel. It's frustrating in the best way possible. But it's not just about the bosses. The enemies scattered throughout this expansion are no joke either. They're relentless, weird, and occasionally terrifying. One moment I was admiring the scenery, the next I was getting ambushed by some unholy abomination I couldn't even describe if I tried. It's classic Elden Ring chaos, and I love it. Titanfall 2. If you haven't jumped into this game yet, you're in for a treat because it's one of those rare shooters that nails everything from movement to story. You're not just running and gunning here. Titanfall 2 turns you into a parkour expert with wall running, double jumping, and slides that let you weave through the battlefield like a pro. The controls are smooth, and once you get the hang of it, it's hard to go back to other games. The map designs are built around this movement too, encouraging you to think creatively about how to get from point A to point B. There's something so satisfying about stringing together a perfect series of moves to outmaneuver enemies, and every match feels like you're pulling off action movie stunts. And then there are the Titans. If you ever wanted to pilot a giant mech, Titanfall 2 makes that dream come true. The game balances your time between playing as a pilot, the fast, agile soldier, and then calling down your Titan, which adds this completely new layer to the gameplay. Titans are powerful, heavy-hitting, and give you this awesome sense of being a walking tank. But it's not just a button mash fest. Every Titan has unique abilities and weapons, so there's actually a good bit of strategy involved. One thing that really stands out in Titanfall 2 is the campaign. Now, I know campaigns in first-person shooters can sometimes feel like a warm-up for multiplayer, but here it's a full experience on its own. It's well-paced, exciting, and even throws in some surprises that keep things fresh. Dying Light 2. Another game that stumbled out of the gate, but is actually pretty awesome when you take a closer look. So, when Dying Light 2 was first announced, people were hyped. The original Dying Light was a sleeper hit, with its intense parkour system and brutal combat, so expectations were sky high for the sequel. But then, delays happened. Lots of them. And with every delay, the excitement started turning into skepticism. When it finally launched in 2022, some people felt like it didn't quite live up to the years of anticipation, and there was plenty of chatter about bugs and performance issues, which, to be fair, did hurt its reputation right out of the gate. But here's the thing. Once you actually dive into Dying Light 2, you realize there's a ton to love about this game. First off, the parkour system is still one of the best in gaming. Running, jumping, and swinging through the city of Villador feels fluid and rewarding. They took what worked in the original and just cranked it up a notch. You really feel like you're flying through this post-apocalyptic world, dodging zombies and hopping between rooftops. The combat? Absolutely brutal. Smacking zombies and bandits with improvised weapons, drop-kicking them off rooftops. It never gets old. Plus, the day-night cycle adds a whole other layer of tension. The zombies are slow and manageable during the day, but at night, man, they become terrifying. It's a heart-pounding experience when you're scrambling to find shelter as the sun goes down and the city gets overrun. Mafia 3. One of the first things you'll notice is how alive New Bordeaux feels. The game nails that late 60s vibe, and I'm talking about the music, the cars, the fashion, even the radio broadcast. It all feels authentic and pulls you right into that era. The city itself is beautifully crafted, with neighborhoods that feel distinct and packed with character. The gameplay is all about strategic takedowns, stealth, and taking control of the city piece by piece. Lincoln doesn't just kick down doors and take names. He's smart about his approach, and you get to choose how to tackle each mission. You can go in guns blazing, but sneaking around and taking out enemies quietly is just as satisfying. Plus, as you start to take control of different territories, you actually build your own little crime empire, assigning lieutenants and gaining perks that make Lincoln even more of a powerhouse. It's a cool twist that makes you feel like you're really shaping the criminal landscape of New Bordeaux. One thing I personally loved about Mafia 3 is how it tackles some serious themes. The game doesn't shy away from the realities of the time. There's racism, corruption, and all kinds of hard truths woven into the storyline. It makes Lincoln's journey feel so much more impactful. You're not just going on missions for the sake of gameplay. You're stepping into his shoes, experiencing the highs and lows, and feeling the weight of what he's fighting for. It gives the story a level of depth that you don't always see in open-world games. Resident Evil 4 Remake. You know how remakes can sometimes feel like just a polished-up version of the original? This one is so much more than that. Capcom managed to take one of the most beloved games in the series and elevate it in all the right ways. It's like they took everything that worked in 2005 and improved it without losing that magic. Honestly, if you're a fan of the original, you're going to be thrilled. First off, the graphics are stunning. You know how the original had that eerie, creepy vibe with its isolated village? Well, the remake takes that atmosphere to a whole new level. The foggy woods, the creepy lighting, it just feels so immersive. There were moments when I had to stop and just take in the environment. It's terrifying, but in a way that makes you want to explore every corner. Gameplay-wise, I was thrilled with how much smoother everything felt. Leon's movements are less stiff, and the gunplay, spot on. The combat has been reworked to feel more dynamic, especially when you're dodging and parrying enemies. Oh, and speaking of enemies, those ganados are way more terrifying this time around. They're more aggressive, smarter, and honestly, I found myself sweating in some of those encounters, especially when you're dealing with hordes at once. I loved the tweaks they made to the characters too. Leon has more personality. He's still got those cheesy one-liners, but he feels more grounded. Ashley is no longer just the damsel in distress. She's actually helpful, and their dynamic adds to the story in a way that feels more natural. Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora. Now, I know a lot of us have waited years to see more of Pandora since the original Avatar movie. Whether you loved it for its visuals, the unique world, or just getting lost in this strange, immersive place. Well, here's the perfect excuse to dive back in and actually be in Pandora, not just watching it on a screen. The cool thing is, you're not just wandering around as a tourist. This is your home, and as you're exploring, you get this real sense of belonging. The way they've crafted the interactions with the world and other Na'vi characters just pulls you into the story. It's personal and really touches on that classic theme of connecting to nature, but on a whole new level. Combat-wise, it's balanced in a way that makes you feel powerful, yet still in tune with the environment. The Na'vi weaponry isn't just about brute force. It's more graceful, blending seamlessly with nature. It's not like you're there to destroy, but rather defend and protect, which gives a nice sense of purpose to every fight. And honestly, if you're into exploration, you're going to have a blast. Pandora's open-world setup lets you go off the main path, uncovering hidden spots that tell little stories of their own. It's the kind of game where you don't mind getting lost, because there's always something breathtaking to discover. So yeah, if you're looking for a game that's both visually stunning and has depth, give this one a shot. It's the kind of experience that'll stick with you long after you've turned off the console.